My guest today is an actor who's had a storied career performing right here in Phoenix, Arizona. She's been in numerous commercials and films such as El Diablo and Ingenious. And just like me, she is a very proud Arizona State Sun Devil. Debby Rosenthal. Debby, such an honor to be talking with you today. And you're a member of the National Touring Company of Menopause, the musical, and you're going to be going back on tour again soon, which is
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
So,
A week from tomorrow, I fly out to start more touring in starting in Savannah, Georgia.
wow, fantastic! That's so cool. So how did that first start? Like, how did you become a part of this touring company?
Um, I would say that I got my degree in musical theater performance from ASU, and then I moved to LA for a couple of years. But I met my husband at Arizona State University. He was getting his master's in piano accompaniment, and I was getting my undergrad in musical theater. And he would never leave Arizona. And so even though I went to LA for a couple of years, Tom is from Chicago and he hates cold weather. So it was a very strange, I know this is a kind of long story going around, but I was doing Marianne in The Music Man in Tucson. So I had driven over from LA to go do that. And we had been dating for like three years. And as anyone knows that has had a long distance relationship, it's very, very difficult. And this was so long ago that that was back in the day when you had to pay for long distance phone calls. And so we would actually take a little tape recorder and tape record messages to each other all week long. And then we'd mail the cassette tape to each other. And that's how we stayed communicating through that. So I was doing Music Man in Tucson, and he was driving back to Phoenix, and then I was going to drive back to LA. And as we're driving through to get out of Tucson, he thought he was having a heart attack. And like you could literally see his heart pounding through his chest. And so I was driving my car and he was the passenger. So I just drove to where I knew there was an like a emergency vehicle, emergency clinic, and it was closed. So I went to one of those grocery stores that had that like opening, like the fan went through, and I drove my little car into this. And I said, please help me. My boyfriend's having a heart attack. And so they called 911 and these paramedics came and they put him on a stretcher and they said, what drugs have you taken? And he's like, I don't take drugs. My husband's so square. He's like, never even had a cigarette. And so they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to take you to the ER. So they said, just follow us. So I'm driving the ambulance, following the ambulance. And, there's that little window in the ambulance car. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, this is the man I know I want to be married to. I want to have children and a life with him. And he's going to die here in Tucson in the middle of nowhere, right? And so we go into the hospital. And so I go to the front and I say, can I see Tom? And they said, and what relationship are you with him? And I said, well, I'm his girlfriend. Now, mind you, I had just come off of stage. I had huge false eyelashes, blue eyeshadow, and I'm like totally dressed up like I was, a hooker. And I'm in this little tiny t-shirt and shorts. And the woman goes, sure you are. And I'm like, no, really, I'm his girlfriend. And they're like, well, you can't see him. So I'm sitting in the lobby waiting, just terrified what's going to happen, right? And the paramedic comes out and I run up to the paramedic and I say, how's Tom? Can I see Tom? And he goes, were you in the Music Man? And I go, yes, yes, I was. He goes, we just saw you last night in the show. And I said, would you please tell them that I'm not a hooker, that I'm really his girlfriend? He goes, I'll get you back. I'll get you back. So then the doctor comes out and he says, well, Tom's doing okay, but we've given him all the heart medication that we can to lower his heart rate, but it's not coming down. So it's not physical, it's emotional. So you've got to go in there and say whatever you need to say to bring his heart rate down. And so I go in there and, he had the hot things all on his chest and he was all pale and sweaty. And I go, what's going on? And he goes, do you think we could get married now? And it was in that moment that I realized here I am in LA following a dream, right? That like how many millions of us have that? And I thought, I don't want to be like so many of the women and actors out there. They're 40 years old and they have a car and a cat. They don't have a spouse. They don't have children. They're living in an apartment. They're struggling. And I didn't want to be 40. I mean, who knows? I mean, it happens to a small percentage of people that actually get to live the dream. And I just thought I would rather, have this marriage with this man and have children and a family and a home than follow something that may never happen. So in that moment, I decided I was going to live in Arizona and do what I can in Arizona. And so I did theater for quite a long time until my second child was about 2 or 3. And I realized that every time I would go to work, it was 3 o'clock to go to the theater. And that's when they'd come home from school. My son would come home from school. And I just thought, children get one childhood, and I have the rest of my life to work. So I stopped doing theater and then I started doing a lot of film and commercial and voiceover work. But I wanted to be home at 3 o'clock when my children came. So back to your first question is that when Abby, my second child, was in a senior in high school, I decided, well, now I feel safe enough to go. So then I started renting apartments and in New York. And I started following what I had always wanted to do. So then I started auditioning in New York, and that's how I got connected with Menopause the Musical, because you have to go, zip code is everything. It's in every job, not just, not just acting. But when you go to New York, you go to Las Vegas, you go to LA and you audition, now you're somebody. Now you have, the credentials. But if you're from Arizona, you're just, you know, I hope, I mean, I'm sure there's, I'm generalizing, but once you start going in other places to audition, you have so much more credibility. And in being a union member, I could do a lot of auditions in New York. So I would just go to New York and do auditions there so that I could work other places.
What would you say for you are the most fun parts of being able to go out on tour and perform in all these different places?
Uh, it's I love to travel, and also I really love the cast. It helps a lot when you really enjoy the people you're working with. And every time you go to a new city, especially if you're doing a sit down, so like in the fall, they started Menopause Musical 2. They've written a sequel to it. And so they flew about 10 or 12, I don't remember the number, into Manhattan. And we rehearsed in Manhattan for 2 weeks and then learning the new show. And then we went to Maine and opened the show in Maine and then went traveling all through Canada. Well, I've never been we went to Prince Edward Island. And I mean, I can't even think of all the places that we went to in Colorado. So I look at that and go, I would have never had that opportunity to explore and get to enjoy, the whole Northeast and into Canada. But I do get to be paid to go and learn those different cities. And then we get to explore on our days off, or if we don't have two-show day, then we can go and do something during the day and then go enjoy the city when we're not. And that makes it very exciting. It's just a total bonus to touring.
Let's go back to the beginning now. Like, how did you first get interested in acting?
I think you're born with it. I think there's just something inside of you that you just have a desire to do it. So my last name is Rosenthal, and so I was raised Jewish, and my older brother and sister both had a bat and bar mitzvah, and so when it was my turn to go to have Hebrew lessons when I was 12, I said, please, please, I want to take tap dancing lessons. I don't want to learn Hebrew. I really want to take tap dancing lessons. And my parents we were very poor. We lived a very modest life. And my parents were like, we can't afford both. And I said, okay, so tap dancing lessons it is, And to be honest with you, I think tap dancing lessons were cheaper than Hebrew lessons, or a big bat mitzvah. So that's how I started. I started doing tap dancing lessons. And then I started getting cast in, the high school shows. My first role was I was Gretel in The Sound of Music at Paradise Valley High School, where I went to high school. And then I was just blessed that, I was just in the right place at the right time to continue to get cast in roles. And then I was just really impatient. Like I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to do things. And to me, high school was really, I hate to say boring, but for me, it was boring. And so I was taking a summer school. It doesn't exist anymore, sadly, but it was called Center Stage. And Center Stage was a summer camp for kids for theater, for musical theater. And I found out that you could get high school credit for taking these summer camps. So when I found that out, and I found out that you could graduate as a junior, because you had these credits from theater camp in the summer. So my junior year of high school, I took both my junior requirements and my senior requirements so that I could get out of high school at 16 years old. And then I didn't, I mean, I didn't know how I was going to get past high school. I didn't know what was going to go next. But my dance teacher held a Miss Scottsdale pageant for the Miss America program in her dance studio. And so I won Miss Scottsdale and I got to go compete in the Miss America, Miss Arizona for Miss America. And I was only 16 years old, and you had to be 17 by September 1st. And I would have turned 17 August 12th. So I would have turned 17 just in time, if, not that I would have won, but, to go do it. And when I did the pageant, there's a lot of misnomers about pageants, but the Miss America program, the Miss America and Miss Arizona program really do offer scholarships. And if it wasn't for the Miss America program, I would never have gone to college. I mean, I had no clue. My parents were not involved at all. And so they just said, Debbie, here's scholarship money. You go to ASU and you go get an education. And so I was like, okay, so like the show closed, like it was like August 10th. So then, like on my birthday, August 12th, I go to ASU, I go to the music theater department, I go down the stairs to where the offices is, and I walk in the door and they go, "You're Debbie Rosenthal." And I go, "How do you know that?" And they go, "We watched you on television Saturday night," because back then the Miss Arizona program was televised. And so the girl who won Miss Arizona was a junior in the music theater program. So they by chance, so that's why I say, by the grace of God, through luck, I didn't take an SAT test. I didn't take an ACT test. I never filled out an application. I walked in the doors and said, I have a scholarship. And they're like, we saw you on TV. We'll accept you. And so it was just amazing to me. I was so lucky. But I never had a voice lesson. I never had musical training. And so I went to take the music theory class, and they said, you're going to have to take the music theory 100 for non-majors. Because, like, I didn't know how to read music. I didn't know what a treble bass clef was. So I really was starting behind the ball. And I was so grateful for that experience, because in my first English class, I go into the English class and I write my first paper. And the teacher called me in after the first paper that we wrote in, and he said, "Can I see you after class?" And so I said, "Sure." So I go to his office, and he said, "Where did you go to high school?" And I said, "I went to Paradise Valley High School, graduated." And he said, "Honey, you don't know how to write a complete sentence." And I said, "I don't." And he's like, "No," because my focus was just dancing and performing. And my parents didn't care. They didn't ask if I did my homework. They didn't care what I was doing. They were just not involved in my life. And what's kind of funny is I've been told by, several other friends that, they look at you and they go, "Oh, well, you're just a girl from Scottsdale and you were handed everything on a silver platter." And I'm like, no, no, I wasn't. I lived in a very poor home. We lived in Scottsdale on 66th Street and Jean Drive, and our family home was repossessed, and my parents' cars were repossessed. We weren't allowed to answer the phones and the doors, and that's why I say, by the grace of God, my dance teacher got me into that pageant, and by the grace of God, that pageant got me a scholarship to go to ASU so that I could get the education that I just never had by circumstance of family and upbringing. And so I just feel very grateful for the people that have come into my life that have helped me and supported me to get where I am. So, when people say, the appearance that we have, that outer shell of who we are, it's really hard, because I told a friend of mine this story about my upbringing and my family. And this man said to me, "Debbie, you should tell more people this story, because most people think that you were just a rich Scottsdale girl who was handed everything." And I said, "And it's so far from the truth." And he said, "But that's the confidence you bring to, auditions, to performing, to who you are." And I said, "Well, of course, because I dragged myself out of, a very poor, negative environment, because it was something that was born in me. It's not like something that I can't take credit for it. It's just something by the grace of God that I was born with. And it's the same thing with my children. I have friends and go, "How do you have a doctor as a daughter?" And I say, "Not me. It was her." She was born with that. That's what she wanted to do. So when you have a child, and I do a lot of teaching too. So when you have a child that says, "This is what I love," gosh, listen to them, because you never know where that can take you. And so I do, as I said, I do a lot of teaching and camps and seminars and lectures and things like that. And even if your child takes performing and dance, or, an instrument, that doesn't mean that they're going to be that for the rest of their lives, for the rest of their career. But the confidence it gives them, to do public speaking and to engage. Like my son's an engineer, but he can talk to people. Like, they say engineers aren't very personal or chatty. Well, Tommy is completely personable and chatty because he acted as a child. He did movies and commercials and films and voiceovers, through my agent that got them work. And then that money that they made doing that was in their college fund. So both of the kids got through college, and Tommy is master's debt free because of all the fun things that they got to do that went into that account, while they were growing up. But they chose different fields. As a matter of fact, our daughter Abby, she auditioned for East Valley Children's Theater, like she was in like third or fourth grade, and she got cast as a pawn in Alice in Wonderland. And so I was so excited for him, like, oh, this is so great. Are you going to? So she went to rehearsals and the opening of the show at Mesa Art Center. And so I'm driving her home at the end of the opening night, and she's sitting in a car seat behind me because she was so tiny. She still had to be in a car seat. So I'm driving and I'm like, Abby, wasn't that so exciting? Wasn't that so fun? And she goes, yeah, I had fun, but I had to miss school and I'm so tired and I didn't have time to do my homework. And I'm thinking, who are you? You're not my child, because I would have done anything to get out of school, right? To go and do something like that. So, it was kind of like a stab in the heart, but it wasn't what my children wanted to do, but you expose them to the things that you love.
Just from your perspective, what do you find to be the most rewarding part about being a mother?
It is the hardest job on earth and also the best job on earth. I would say, like, when I perform and I'm on stage, you're just kind of in your job, you're concentrating on what you're doing. But when you watch your child, like Abby took a lot of dance, she enjoyed dancing, you're watching them. And when you see them joyful, when you watch her succeeding or being happy, that's the greatest joy. When you watch your children be happy, or, when Tommy first introduced us to his future wife, Emily, and, you see that happiness. And same with Abby and Kevin. Or, when they're graduating, it's like when we went to Kevin and Abby's, graduation from medical school, and you're just watching them up there and you just go, I feel so blessed that you chose me to be your mom, because I really feel, who knows, but I think sometimes that you get a choice of who you pick as your parents. And I just feel so grateful that these two little souls, these two little human beings, that I got to watch them grow up and become who they are. And now that Tommy and Emily have had a grandson, his name is Teddy, getting to go over there, and right now I teach on Mondays and Thursdays privately, and then on Tuesdays and Fridays I go babysit Teddy. So it makes me so happy, and I am not a morning person, so I hate getting up in the morning. So I have to go to their home because my son works from home 2 days a week. So I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is like torture to me. But like when my husband and I are going to bed, he's like, "You're so happy." And I'm like, "Yes, because I get to get up tomorrow and see Teddy." Because in the morning, because as soon as Tommy opens the door and Teddy's there and he's going, and he's kicking his leg and just can't wait to jump in your arms, it's just like that is the best thing in the whole world. It can't even compare to what any performing is like. And because Tom and I we work in a church, Tom is the music director in a church, and it's in a retirement community out in Rio Verde. We do a lot of memorial services. And you listen to families talk about their parents or whatever, and no one ever says, I wish I worked more. They talk about the relationship, the time they spent with that person. And so as much as I value my career as a performer, as much as I am, like sometimes I feel like performing is like oxygen. like it's like a drug addiction, like it's almost a disease. I mean, I feel like sometimes if you haven't done a show, a live performance for a while, it's almost like you start going through withdrawals because it's just such an amazing generation of energy for your body. I think that's the hard part. And I think it's a hard for, I'd say, most performers because, you're either working or you're not. Like there's not much of an in between, performing. And it's quite cyclical. And so I do a lot of work at the Phoenix Theater. And, sometimes in a season, you'll do two shows. And then a year and a half will go by and you didn't do any. And it's just, what are the shows? What parts are there available for you? And as I get older, the parts just get small. There's just not as many parts for my age category. It's all, young 20s, high school, college, young families. Those are most of where the performing is. And gratefully, as our, generation gets older, the baby boomers, there is more material like Menopause the Musical, which I'll be doing, starting next week, which gives more mature performers an opportunity to still keep performing.
What was ASU like back in the day, when you were there?
You're not going to make me tell you what year, right? That I graduated from. Um, I would say the thing, like if you know where the music building is at ASU, it's off of Mill Avenue. It's just kind of north of Gamage. And then the dance department was all the way past MU. And so back when I was going to college there, I could walk or ride my bike from the music building to past the MU and get to my dance class in time. But by the time I was a senior, I couldn't do that anymore. It was so congested. There were so many people that, you really noticed the difference of just how many students were there. I also felt, very lucky that in the music theater program, it was a small, there's every year there's just a small group of you and you just get so much attention and there's so many more opportunities to perform. And we did so many shows a year. So like back when I was there, it was in Lyric Opera Theater. In my 4 years at ASU, I did 13 productions. I was in 13 productions at ASU. And I also have to say that part of that was because I stayed in the summer because I lived in Arizona. So I got the opportunity to audition for the summer shows, which gave me credit too. But today they don't do as many shows, I believe, as they used to do. And so I just don't think there's as many opportunities to get to perform maybe as there used to. Now I could be wrong. So if you're from ASU and I'm saying this, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I just felt like there were like, you know, I don't know. I just remember feeling that there were a lot of performances and we all got a lot of attention and we all got a lot of opportunity to work as performers. And the beauty is, I do think that's nice is that at ASU today, the kids that are going to ASU today have the opportunity to go out and work in the other theaters throughout the city, which is really nice. I know a lot of ASU students work at Hale. I know a lot of ASU students come and work at Phoenix Theater, the Phoenix Theater Company. So they have, and there's so much community theater going out. There's a lot of wonderful theater going on. So there's a lot of opportunities out of ASU as well that they can go and do outside of the college as well if they don't get cast in one of the productions there at school.
Yes, for sure. Were there any places, during college that you frequented a lot, like maybe a restaurant or a park, just any sort of places?
Uh, well, there used to be a restaurant called The Good Earth, and they used to have this really delicious cinnamon tea. You could have it hot or cold. That was amazing. And it was on the southeast corner of University and Mill Avenue. And like that was the healthy restaurant. It was one of our favorite places to go. So that is one of our favorite places to go. And then I don't know the street. The street that the music building is on, across the street used to be a Dairy Queen. And so we would also hit the Dairy Queen. And there used to be a grocery store across that we would, I lived in the dorms. It was called McClintock Dorm, that it is right next to the theater building. And that's right, really, a 3-minute walk from the music building. So my parents wouldn't let me live on campus my freshman year, but then my sophomore, junior, senior, I lived in a McClintock dorm. And it was just really great to be so close that you could just, walk over to the music building. Because I would say my freshman year, that was the hardest thing is that, if you're getting up and having to be at a class at 7 a.m., for the dance class, the movement class, whatever, and then you're in rehearsals for a show and you get out at 11. And I remember driving up Scottsdale Road, crossing over, the Rio Salado, the river. I can't think what it's called. But when you're driving, and I remember being so tired, like almost falling asleep at the wheel. And I said to my mom, I said, I have to live on campus. I can't get up and be out the door at 6 a.m. and not get home till midnight, and then turn around and get back. It was just too hard, it was just too many hours, on campus. So being on campus was really a blessing.
Yes, for sure. Did you go to any of the sports events during your time there?
Next question. I know. I never went to a sporting event at ASU. I know
Wow,
it's sad,
wow,
isn't
wow,
it?
really? Wow.
Yeah, I know. I know I'm in the minority. But and I do regret this, and I do tell parents, a lot of the parents I coach and teach, when you're so tunnel visioned and just doing music, dance, and acting, and you have no life experience outside of that, you can't really bring much to the table to that performance because what does it feel like to be in a huge stadium cheering for your team? And what does it feel like to strike out in a softball game? And what does it feel like to, like to do other things? So, that's why I really encourage parents to expose your children to a lot of things. Because if they never know what it feels like to hit a ball or kick a soccer, how do you know that they don't love it if you just don't even let them try it? Like my son Tommy, loved to tackle. He was a big boy and he's 6'1". And I remember he wanted to do football really bad. So we signed him up for the football thing and he loved it. He loved tackling. He was center. And as soon as he got the wind knocked out of him for the first time, he's like, oh, I don't want to play football anymore. And we're like, no, 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 you committed. You're staying in for the season, because that's what you had to learn. But he learned that when you tackle someone else might tackle you back. I mean, it taught him a very valuable lesson. So I just feel like I didn't get those lessons, growing up because it was just so tunnel visioned that it really changed my opinion as a teacher and as a parent to say, please try other things, because when you're not working, when you're not doing a show, when you're not on a film set, when you're not, what are you doing? You have to have a life outside of your job because otherwise you're going to be miserable. And the other thing I think really interesting is that when I've kind of gone and done some like subbing at ASU and lecture series and things like that, a lot of kids, same thing. They're only doing, live theater. And, I would say I make double the money whenever I'm in a film, a commercial, doing a voiceover, double. Like I was the voice of Bashes for 7 years. And I would walk into a recording studio with a music stand in front of me and I would read 11 commercials and walk out making $15,000 in 45 minutes to an hour. You know how long that takes to make that in theater? A really long time. So that's why I was trying to expose the children saying, don't just do live theater. You're going to end up living in your parents' basement, for the rest of your life. You have to do everything. You've got to have a lot of balls in the air because you keep the skills, the muscles alive. Like say, for example, during COVID, I love my church job. I get to sing twice a week, Wednesdays at rehearsals, Sunday mornings in our church job. And during COVID, we never closed our church. We just started live streaming. So I still got to sing twice a week, while everyone else was just sitting at home, unless you were practicing and singing yourself. The vocal cords are just muscles, like any other muscle in your body. You stop using it, it's not as powerful. It's not as flexible so it's really important that you keep singing. And if you can find things that you love, and especially if it can pay you to stay in shape, like teaching. I love teaching. I teach private voice lessons, and I'm also the director of education at Fountain Hills Youth Theater, and I do all their camps and workshops. So like for spring break camp, I was just teaching, from 9 in the morning till 3 o'clock at Fountain Hills Theater teaching. We did a pop musical spring break camp. And I taught all the kids how to use a microphone and how when you're singing loud, and each child got to pick their own solo. And we did group numbers with all pop music. So now these kids have the opportunity to not just do musical theater, but now they know how to use a microphone and also how to sing pop music, which is a totally different style than singing musical theater.
Yeah, absolutely. I can really relate to what you just said, Cook. And because a lot of times, no, my mom will, my mom will tell me to not be afraid to step outside of my comfort zone. And not be afraid to do different things. And I think, and I think that's a really good thing to not be afraid to kind of put your hands in a bunch of different pots, I guess.
Well, like as you know, so you're saying you're a senior in the journalism school,
Yes.
right? So like I'm sure as a journalist, you have to, you can't just do, I'm only doing sports. I'm sure that's lovely and someone is doing just sports, but when you're starting out especially, I mean, I don't know, you tell me, are you choosing a specific genre in the journalism department?
So that's that's a really good question. My focus, in journalism, and it's especially, it's kind of when I got here, the focus was in sports. That was kind of that was like the main thing, right? But no, but as I've gone on, I've been able to do, and I love doing this stuff, right? Where I get to talk with actors about their careers. Like, I get to learn more about theater, film, TV, all that stuff. And then I've also done, I've done music stuff as well. I like getting into that. And I'll say this as well. Journalism isn't just on camera stuff. There's also a ton of behind the scenes stuff, like
Yeah.
like news stations. There's people behind the cameras. There's production stuff, and I've been able to do that. It's just again, like I said earlier, I just think it's a good thing to do a variety of things and not just kind of go in one singular lane.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of people ask, trying to get in, they'll say, how do I get in the door at Phoenix Theater? Or how do I, what do I do? And I say, well, you're not always going to get cast, when you audition in a leading role. I mean, like, go volunteer, let them get to know you because I feel like, well, all of us, like, don't you love, like, when you are cheering, excuse me, for a specific athlete in a game? Like, if you're like, I love this quarterback and when you're watching that, you just totally root, it makes the whole game more exciting. And it's the same thing when you're performing and you know someone up on that stage, like you watch them a little bit more because you know them. It makes it more exciting. And it's also about getting cast. When people know you and they like working with you, then they're going to keep casting you. So it's kind of hard when talented people move into town and they're like, well, how do I get my foot in the door? And it's kind of like you got to hang in there and you have to let them get to know you. Because what I've noticed when I started expanding my search to work outside of Phoenix, after, my kids were grown, is that, when I audition in, Colorado or in Denver, and I'm auditioning for a nice equity theater there, well, they already have their favorites. They already have someone my type, my age, that they already love and know. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to break into a community when you're just going in cold. And that's why I think auditioning in New York is really the best route, because when you go to New York to audition for a theater in Denver, they're there looking for someone else. If you just audition in Denver, this is, and of course, this is just my experience. This is what I have experienced, is that they already have their favorites. They already know who they want. And when a theater generally is picking a season, they're picking it knowing who they have. So like they're not going to pick a show that has a specific character that they cannot cast. And if they don't have one locally, then that's, they go, like even Phoenix Theater, they go to New York, they audition in New York. And I would say the hardest thing I believe they have casting is dancers, especially male dancers. It's just there's just not a lot of them here in Phoenix. So you've just got to follow your path. And I think you have to it kindly use your resources and the people that you know. Like I had friends that moved to New York. I called them and said, like I had a friend from high school, Don Ray. And when I went to New York, I was a little lost. I mean, I grew up in Phoenix, right? And I only lived in LA. And so I'm like, Don, explain a little bit about the subways to me. Like, so if I got lost, I mean, and this was from a high school, a friend of mine that lives in New York, and I would just call him, and he was just so gracious and kind. I hadn't seen him in God knows how many years, and he would just help me, get to know the city. And then I would take him out to dinner and say, thank you. thank you for helping me. You didn't have to do that. And, if you try and offer someone money, they're like, no, 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 don't pay me. But they'll take, they'll let you take them out to dinner for a drink. So I just think, use your, people like to help people. I had a friend here in town that said, I want to start doing what you're doing and going to New York. And he said, can I take you to lunch? And I said, well, of course, I'll share everything I know with you because it's a whole different city. This is how you get the subway. Here's the card. This is how, here's all this equity union studios and places. Here's the best place to go shopping, everything like that. And when we were done, he hands me this thank you card, and inside was like an Amazon gift card for $50. And I said, oh, I'm not taking this. Please use this in New York. You're going to need it in New York because a red pepper costs $5, so you have to use it because I think people do want to help. They want to help you. They want to see you succeed. So, don't be, I think it's hard to ask for help. So like for a weird example, I was home with the kids at the time, and I'm just on the treadmill or whatever, and I'm watching. If you guys remember a show called Sonoran Living Live, Sonoran Living Live, and they said we're going to have a contest to have someone come in and be a co-host for the day, and I thought, oh, would that be fun? So I applied, and I got it, and I was on like 5 times getting to be the co-host, on a live morning talk show, and then I pitched to them. I said, I love theater. Can I start reviewing theater and just really help support theater in Phoenix? Because I would, just get a person in that chair, that empty chair. And so I said, I'm not critiquing. I'm not going to be negative. I just want you to know my goal would be to just make people aware of a certain show and who it would be good for. This is a children's show, or this is a show, please don't bring anyone under 15 show, So, and then I did that for a year because it was fun. And what you were saying, I learned a lot about the newsroom at ABC 15 because I thought the theater world was difficult and competitive. Nothing like the newsroom. Oh my gosh, the anchors and just the competition. I just thought, whew, I'll take theater over that. It was competitive, man. It was tough. It was a tough environment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will definitely say this thing, the journalism and broadcasting industry, it is no joke.
No joke. No joke. And the other thing is also, sometimes you'll hear like musicians are flaky or actors are flaky. And I used to think it was just, the industry that I was in. And as I've gotten older and done more things as just, a human in the world, it's flaky people everywhere at the bank, at the grocery store, at the roofer, if flaky people are everywhere. It is certainly not just in, journalism or performing at all.
Yep, yep. It's very true, very true.
So do you have plans after graduation? You'll be graduating in May?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I will be graduating in May. It's it's crazy because of these 4 years. It feels like it's gone by so fast. It's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean that's a great question. It's I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. I'm applying to a lot of things. I'm sending out like I'm just sending out a ton of cold emails right now to various people in journalism, communications, various different things. Just pretty much because when you're looking for the first job, you're just trying to find something. You're just hoping that someone will bite, right? So so it's a bit of a it's an interesting process, a little stressful at times, but just trying to stay patient and just kind of trust the process, I guess.
Yes. Well, it kind of bring me back to that one of your other questions when you said, what's the difference from now to from back when I was there, is that when I graduated from ASU and I flew to Dallas, I think it was, and I applied to do it was like a Disney cruise or something. I can't really remember. It's just too long ago. I don't remember, but I didn't get it. I didn't get cast. And I just remember, I was graduating in a week and I'm like, what do I do now? Like I think I got a wonderful education at ASU. I think they taught me immeasurable amounts to be on what to do on stage and how to audition, but they never taught me how to get the job. And today I really have to, Mr. Damaris he takes them to New York now and they get to do a showcase to a bunch of agents in New York before they graduate. And I have to say, I think it's brilliant. And Toby Yatso is also a amazing human at music theater program. And I just believe in the program and I believe in what they're doing for the future musical theater artists at ASU and how lucky they are to be taken to New York and to be exposed to what it would be like. Because the first time you audition in New York, I don't care how comedy, it's a little scary. You know, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in New York auditioning. I mean, I just remember thinking how scary it was. I did go to New York and audition once. I can't remember what year it was, but I went for a specific show and I went and auditioned and I was oblivious. I was just like, yeah, you go and you sing, you do your thing. And then I got called back. And then it was like 3 or 4 days before the callback. So I went every night to a Broadway show. And then I saw the name of the agency that was casting the show on every front program. And by the time I got there on Thursday for the callback, I was so scared because I'm thinking, well, they cast that person and they cast that. I'm just like, then it became intimidating. So sometimes I feel like I say to my husband sometimes, I just sometimes wish I didn't know certain things because it wouldn't upset me or bother me or get me nervous, but you have to go in educated. But I think that first audition is definitely the most intimidating, but how lucky they are that they're bringing them there to do that while they're being supported by their university. You know, it's really a great program.
I'm really excited to talk about this. I saw you were in the Phoenix Theater production of Mamma Mia. Oh my gosh. I cannot tell you how excited I was when I saw you were in this. And, no, and I think on your YouTube channel you have like some clips of it
Yeah,
and it looked amazing. And I mean, first off, I think it's awesome because I am a huge ABBA fan. I
me
love
too.
their music. Oh my gosh, amazing. And you said that when you first saw Mamma Mia, like when you actually watched the show, you really connected with Donna, as a character. And then, of course, you end up playing her, which is super cool. What about that character made it easy to connect to?
Well, I saw the show here in Phoenix at Gamage Auditorium, and that's when I was working for ABC 15. And I got, because they would give me 2 free tickets to go promote the show. I don't want to say I was reviewing the show, I was promoting the show. And I was sitting in the house seats, and I remember, I think I brought my son Tommy with me. He was like, I don't know, 12. And we were watching the show, and sometimes there's just certain things that speak to you. And as I'm watching Donna, you just go, I feel her. I feel her character. And I think that Donna is her heart was with her daughter Sophie. And when she sang Slipping Through My Fingers, like I was weeping. And my daughter was like only 9 at the time. But, I think about, how much you love your children and how much you want it's such a fine line to support them, love them, do what makes them happy, but also being the parent. You have to, you know, say no a lot, especially when they become teenagers. And when I was watching her, when I was watching Donna, the role of Donna, I just said, I have to play her. I have to play that role. Someday I really need to play that role. And the fact that I got to play that role, it's one of those things where you just go, bucket list. It's a bucket list for me, and there are roles that I would have killed to play. Like I would have loved to been Maria in The Sound of Music. I mean, that would have been a bucket, and I'm too old to play that role now. But that is a role that I also really felt connected to, that I just think there's certain parts. I think every actor feels that way. They read something or they watch a show. I remember the first time it happened to me, I was in Seattle and I saw a musical called Angry Housewives. And it's not even done anymore. It's very dated. But the role of Jetta, I just saw it. And I just looked at it and she was a mom. And I just said, oh, I've got to play that role. And then a year later, Phoenix Theater was doing it. And I auditioned for it and I got the role of Jetta. So sometimes you're lucky and you get to really connect to a role. And then you are privileged enough to get to play that role, which is just such an honor. As a matter of fact, my husband and I are going to London in May. We've never been, and they have this Mamma Mia like dinner party,
Oh
and
my
it's all
God.
ABBA, and it's like a Greek. So I'm booking tickets to go see that because like it's a whole evening of dinner, being in the Greek Isles, singing ABBA music. So couldn't be a bigger fan.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh, I bet you're gonna have a blast.
I think
Sounds
so
awesome.
too. I think so too. But I mean, how can you not? And it's funny because I do know people that don't like Mamma Mia. Like, um, I would say my passion is for happy musical theater. Like I'm that, and I love playing mother roles. As a matter of fact, there's a film company here in town, and his name is Kerry. He kept casting me as the mom to play different parts. And one time he goes, we're on set, and he goes, Teddy, I'm so sorry. I just keep casting you as a mom. I'm like, please typecast me all you want. Like I'll be happy to play a mom every single time. And there are other mom roles that I've played or auditioned for that are that real stern mom or the mom that's not lovey touchy. And I don't get cast in those roles. As much as we all think, and some women are people are like that. They can play all parts. I'm not Meryl Streep, So I feel like, we all kind of have our type. I love my type. Typecast me all you want. But Donna is my type of character. It's my type of person that I love to play.
Were there any new things you learned or maybe even challenges that you faced during Mamma Mia's production?
Yes. That's so odd that you asked that question. Because it's the only time it's ever happened to me. I got food poisoning the week before we opened. And I started rehearsals at 3, and I'm in the rehearsal room, and all of a sudden, you know how you get that feeling in your gut, like, I'm going to be sick. So I just went up into the bathroom that's up by the rehearsal studio space, and I never left it for hours. And they had to call my husband to come get me because I could not leave the bathroom. I was so, so sick. And I made it through the night, and then I missed that one day of rehearsal, and then I was back the next day, and then this is too graphic, but things were happening that in my body that were not normal, and my daughter-in-law kept saying to me, Debbie, you need to go to the emergency room. You need to go get this checked out. And I kept saying, I'm in a show. I don't have time. I don't have time to go to the emergency room. I'm in a show. So anyway, I finally did go because it had gotten that bad. And I'm in the emergency room and so anyway, my entire large intestine were hemorrhaging, bleeding. And so they, gave me all this medication. They thought I might have C. diff. And so it was really, really bad. And so I come home the next morning and I'm like, I have to get up. I have to be at rehearsal tomorrow at 3. So like I ended rehearsal at 11 p.m., went to the emergency room. My husband took me. And then I went home and slept. And then I got up and was back at rehearsal the next day at 3. But that morning, Michael Barnard, who is the producing artistic director at Phoenix Theater, he calls me in the morning and he says, "Hi, how are you?" And I've known Michael since 1988. He's brilliant. He says, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm okay." He goes, "Well, I hear you were in the emergency room. How you doing? You're our leading actress of the opening show of the season." And I said, "Michael, you will have to carry my dead, cold, bloody body off this stage before I'm not doing this show." you know, because it's a dream role. And so at like in between like rehearsals or like dinner breaks, I brought a sleeping bag and I just put the sleeping bag underneath the hanging part in our dressing room and I would sleep. And then I'd get up and I'd do the show and then I'd go home and sleep. And I know there are a lot of actors out there that do the same thing. They break their leg in a show and they're still going, and then they get a splint on and they're like, "I'm sorry, but I have to be back on stage tomorrow to dance." So I don't know if it's just, the old school of the show must go on in our generation, but we even have understudies today. And I'm like, I'd have to have COVID. If I had COVID, obviously, I wouldn't go on because you don't want to share that with anybody. And that had been a problem. They had understudies where they got a lot of understudies for COVID. But other than COVID, I would be on that stage. It's just that it's like you work so hard to get, through the auditioning process and the rehearsal process and all the classes you took all your life. By the time you finally get to the show, it's like you've already put in so much effort that, I'm not giving it up because I have a tummy, for me, because I have a tummy ache or I have a headache or my back hurts. Now, if I was, just for me, I wouldn't miss. you know. And I know there's a lot of actors out there that are like that, that just wouldn't miss a performance.
Now, in addition to your stage work, you've been in films as well. And I'm really excited to talk about this. You have a role in this 1990 Western film called El Diablo, and you get to sing in this movie too, which is really cool. What was your experience like working on this film?
It was really interesting. It was, as you said, 1990. It was freezing cold. It was in December, and Lou Gossett Jr. was the lead, and I was on set for about 10 days or so. And they have craft services and they have to feed you because you're there usually on a film set, you're there really early in the morning. You're usually there by 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning to get in costume and makeup and everything. And Lou Gossett Jr. was the nicest guy. He would sit next to you and talk to you, and he just enjoyed people, and it was just really fun. I know that he has passed away, but he's got this huge, repertoire of work that he's done, and you look at it and go, he was great. I mean, what an honor for me, just this little actor from Phoenix, getting to work with this huge celebrity. And he just treated everybody the same. And it was just really awesome. And then I also did a film called Ingenious, and it starred, can't remember his name, darn it. Anyway, he's a big famous actor now. Anyway, so this was before he did Hurt Locker. He was the lead in Hurt Locker. And he was a nobody when he was doing this movie, and we another film, and Dallas Roberts was on it. He was a big star. There was another woman that was had worked with Steven Spielberg, another big star, and he was the nastiest, unkind, unfriendly nobody that I'd ever worked with, ever on a set. He was just rude, not personally to me, but like just to everybody in general. And you look at that and go, he was just an actor from LA, that was just, and now he's this huge star.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're talking about Jeremy Renner, right?
Yes, Jeremy. Yes, I
Oh
am.
my gosh, wow. And and I know him from the Marvel movies. He's
Yes, he was the
Hawkeye.
one with the arrows.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So,
Hawkeye.
so when I worked with him, I was on set for about 2 weeks in Tucson, filming, making that film. I was his secretary in that movie, him and Dallas Roberts' secretary. And it was just like, and Dallas Roberts was in Walk the Line. It's like he was this huge famous person. And it was just really interesting to be working with him. And then you watch that he wins this Oscar and you're like, wow. And then he just goes on bigger and bigger and bigger. So who's to say?
Now, speaking of more big names that you've been able to cross paths with, I also saw that you were the opening act for the legendary late Bob Newhart when he performed at the I think it was Wild Horse Pass.
Wild Horse Pass. Yeah, yeah. Again, so kind, so generous, warm, welcoming. So at Wild Horse Pass Casino, they have like a pre-show before he comes out and does his stand-up, right? And he requests a full band. He wants a full band. Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, a full orchestra, the whole 9 yards. And so I received a phone call and they just said, we've got an orchestra, but we'd like to hire you to entertain for 20 minutes before with a big band, and you can pick anything you want. So my husband, Tom, is a music director, and he was able to pull, I think we sang 7 songs. And Tom had all the orchestrations for all the musicians and conducted, Bob Newhart's music as well. They gave him that as well. And it was just a blast to, get in one of my fancy dresses. When I was a soloist for the Phoenix Symphony, one of their Holiday Pops concerts, they're like, you can wear anything you want. They just have to be long dresses. So, of course, shopping. So I went out and bought 3 beautiful long gowns so that every time I came out, I was in a different gown, which makes it really fun. So I was able to wear, one of those gowns that you don't get many opportunities to wear a sequenced, long gown. And he was just as nice as can be. Funny, still as funny as ever, kind, great. It was a wonderful experience.
we've talked about it a little bit, but I want to talk with you about your teaching. Because what I think is so great is that you don't just teach your students about acting, right? You teach them about like these great life skills, like things like responsibility, teamwork, just working hard, commitment. How important is it to establish these things in your teachings?
1000% important. And children get the same, I believe, like if they're on a team sport, they if they're in a football team, baseball team, soccer team, whatever, any kind of sport, I believe that coaches give that to them as well. Responsibility, dedication, being on time, teamwork, they can learn it from a lot of different, avenues. And in theater, I believe that acting is 90% of what's going on between your ears. Because my philosophy is if you train the brain, the body will follow. So if you know how to focus those nerves, if you know how to focus that attention, you'll be able to do your job rather than thinking, oh my gosh, what if I forget my words? What if this happens? What if this happens? But if you sit there and go, I'm going to concentrate on my lyrics. I'm going to continue to make sure my word, I'm going to do my breathing exercises. I'm going to think about like, before I do a performance, if I like when I was singing at Symphony Hall, I was shaking in my booth. I was so nervous because, it was incredible to think, what it was me and the 80-piece Phoenix Symphony Orchestra behind me and the 100-member Phoenix Symphony Chorus behind me behind that. And you're just standing there with a microphone in the spotlight by yourself, and it's intimidating because the sound that's coming from behind you is absolutely frightening. And so when I'm holding my mic and I'm about to enter, I literally just say to myself, you're prepared. You did your homework. You're prepared. Just stay focused on the work and not about everything else. So when you can stay focused on what your job is, and then when you're done and you cut off the note, then I can think about everything else. But like for example, I've been teaching private voice lessons for probably at least 25 years. And what's hard about it is that when I'm on tour, when I'm out of town, or when I'm in a show, I can't teach because I'm performing. And performing starts when school kids get out of school. And when do kids want to take voice lessons? It's, from 3 to 8 o'clock at night. So it's hard to keep students because, I can't maintain that consistency all the time. And, especially dedicated students. But anyway, a lot say. But when I teach at Fountain Hills Theater and I'm teaching a group of kids, I've learned I'm doing this is my fourth year doing it. And what I've learned is I don't like punishing kids. I mean, my philosophy as a parent has always been catch them being good, reward them for being good, and then let the natural consequences of their bad choices, let those happen. You know what I'm saying? So like, for example, if Abby forgot her lunch for school and she calls or whatever, this is a long, because my kids are adults now, but I would bring it once. And then the next time she called, I said, well, you better figure it out. Better have maybe one of your friends will share with you. Maybe your teacher will lend you some money, or you're just going to have to go hungry. Because if I keep bringing you your lunch, you're never going to learn that if you don't do what you're supposed to, you're going to go hungry. And I think it's so hard. Do you think that, and that was not easy for me to do because you know what I want to do as a mother? Oh, here's your lunch. I want to bring it to her. But if I did that, then Abby wouldn't be responsible. Then she wouldn't know that it's not my job. I mean, her lunch is sitting there on the counter. I made her lunch. She's got to be the person to bring it. So in camp, I have set up things. Well, let me give you another example before I do that on like making choices. So like when Abby was in high school, for example, her curfew was midnight. She's driving, she's a senior in high school. So her curfew was at midnight. Well, not all of her friends had a midnight curfew. So she would say, well, why can't I stay out, after midnight? And I say, because nothing good happens after midnight. That's why. And I have a couple of friends actually that have that their husbands are policemen. And so they've shared with me, or like a policeman on a set, because there's always a policeman on set, will say nothing good happens after midnight. They'll tell you these stories, and you're like, oh yeah, I believe you. I'm good. She's not going out after midnight, and so of course, of course, our situation, but so she would call and she'd say, she'd come in at 12:15, and I'd say, did you have fun? And she's like, well, Jennifer was having a hard time. And so, I just stayed and talked to her. And I go, well, great, because now you don't get to go out next weekend because Jennifer was more important than your curfew. That's not fair. Well, of course it's fair. You chose whether you wanted to keep your curfew and go out next weekend, or Jennifer's needs were more important. And she'd say, but she needed me. Well, then come home and call her or bring her home with you. You know what I mean? Like there's choices. And so then she'd get mad, and I'd say, it's okay. You're allowed to get mad. That is your job as a teenager, is to get mad. You're doing an excellent job being a teenager. You're pushing the envelope, you're testing the limits. That's your job. And my job as your mother is to say no and I love you. My job as your mother is to keep you safe and to teach you. It's not to be your best friend. And though we are best friends, but there are times when it's not. I mean, it's much harder, in my opinion, to uh, carry through my words and say, if you miss curfew, you don't go out next weekend. It's much harder for that because now she's home all weekend complaining and whining that I have to listen to. It would be much easier if I just let her, go out. But I think it's our job to make sure that, it's not, being a parent isn't easy. It's not my job. My job is not to make my life easy. My job is to teach my children. And I feel that way as a teacher. So I believe in catching them being good. So I have this reward system. It's called end of the day rewards. And so everybody's name's on a piece of paper, and there's an X on it. And I have a red Sharpie. And so I say, if you don't get a red X during today, you get to pick out of my big candy bowl when you're leaving camp today for making good choices. And if you get a red X, you just made poor choices. It doesn't make you a poor person or a bad kid. It just means that you made a bad choice that day. You have choices. And so the kids like it all. Now all I have to do is just go, should I bring out my red Sharpie? No, no, we don't want the red Sharpie. They want that. It's silly how that little fun size candy, it is so important to a child. And then at the end of the week, if they haven't gotten any red X's at the end of the week, I have this big basket full of, I don't want to say toys. They're just, treats. And I call it, the end of the week reward basket. And then at the end of the week, I fill the stage with all these things. There's toys, there's jewelry, there's clothes, there's all these things. And then they get to go shopping and pick an item out of the out of the whole full stage full of items that they get to pick. And you should see their faces, when they get this, new hair clip or this new little ring or this bracelet or something or a new t-shirt or whatever. They're so excited. And that's why I say, we all have choices to make. So when they're in my camp, I don't want to punish you. I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to be a policewoman. I want to have fun with you. So if we have fun together, look how much they learn when we're having fun together, and so and then they always get, two breaks and a lunch and everything like that. And it's joyful because when we do the show at the end of the week and they see the accomplishment of what it's like being a parent. It's like the great when I see them so happy at the end of the performance and their parents are standing and clapping from them and saying, how'd you memorize all that? Oh my God, I've never heard you sing better. That's the reward. That is to watch those children be joyful and inspired and excited to go out and audition and do other things. It's the greatest part.
My last question here, and I ask this to every guest who comes on the show. What is the biggest piece of advice that you have for aspiring actors?
Hmm. Can it be a few little things?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Continue to study. So once you get cast in a role or a show, continue to study. There is one of the my favorite humans on earth. His name is Mike Lawler. He is an amazing performer here in town. And this man still takes voice lessons and acting lessons every week. And he's been doing performing for 45 years. And I go, Mike, how do you do it? He goes, because I love it. Because I love it. And so I think that if you want to be a performer, you can't do it because you think you're going to be rich. And that's an interesting thing because I've had lots of students come in, like my agent would send me students to help get, once they were signed with an agent to learn how to audition on camera, because auditioning and performing on film is 1000% different than being on stage. It could not be more different. And so the child would come in and I'd say, So tell me what you want to do. What do you like? And they'd say, I want to be a star. And I'd say, I can't help you. There's no job title called star. They want to be a celebrity. Well, then go get a YouTube channel, go do Instagram. But that's not going to be acting, singing, but that is what you have to do, it because you love it, not because you want to be a star or make a lot of money. Can you be a star and make a lot of money? Sure. But don't do it because of that, because you're going to be disappointed. Because if you think of what's the percentage of people who want to be performers on stage, on screen, there's a lot of people, millions, right? And how many truly make it? 0.% something. It's not even 1%. It's probably point something percent that actually make a living and are wealthy from performing. And then I would say, don't give up. If you really want to do this, you just keep finding teachers and classes and places to go audition. But don't give up, because once you give up, it'll never happen. Be Tom Selleck. Keep working. Be that woman who won the Oscar in Titanic. You might have to get another job doing something else until you do it. But I got my equity card in 1988, and still you can't just be an actor, at least not in Phoenix, and just do if you think you're going to do theater in Phoenix and make a living, I'm here to tell you it's impossible. You can't. It doesn't exist. There's only one union theater in Maricopa County, and that is the Phoenix Theater. So the only place that I can audition on a regular basis. Now, there are some community theaters that do equity guest artist contracts, but aren't equity theaters per se. But in Phoenix Theater is the only place that a union actor can work in Maricopa County. So now when they bring in Gamage and all these other touring companies, they're bringing them from out of town, and not necessarily cast from here. And sometimes those Gamage places do have auditions. So always watch that and see if you can audition for one of those places. So that's number two. And the third thing would be kind to yourself, because it's hard. We all have, I call them ants. It's not my acronym. I stole it from someone. I can't remember his name. He's a doctor, psychologist. But ants stand for automatic negative thoughts. We all have them. You have them. Everyone has them. You wake up in the morning and it goes through your head. Well, gosh, I wish today someone would be kind to me, or gosh, I wish today I didn't feel fat, or we all have automatic negative thoughts going in our heads. And so through my camps and teaching, I say we have to learn how to control our automatic negative thoughts, because I believe we would never be as cruel to someone else as we are to ourselves. I mean, think about some of the cruel things you say to yourself. There's some pretty cruel things we say to, you know what I mean? Like, you stupid person, why did you do that? Or why did you forget that? Like, we're all so mean to ourselves. And I just did this women's retreat because I think mental health is the most important thing to be an actor, because this is a tough, tough, tough career on you mentally, because you're constantly being judged. So like, I'm not selling iPhones. I'm selling me. I'm the product. So sometimes it's really hard not to take it personal when you don't get work. You see what I'm saying? So I would just say that learning how to control our automatic negative thoughts to be kind to ourselves is so important and so hard to do. So at this women's retreat, we were all kind of talking and everyone was kind of saying things. And I said, isn't it amazing how hard we are on ourselves? Because you listen to other people talking, you're like, I love her, she's amazing. And she's sitting there hating on herself. Well, I don't do this and I don't do that. And this person's hating on themselves. And I'm like, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. You get up in the morning and you're like, God, are you going to get it together today? What are you going to be, when are you going to stop watching YouTube videos? Or, like, we all go through those periods. And I think that we just have to, like, give grace to other people and to yourself, because being a human is hard. Life is hard. And we just have to take those joys of when my little grandson, Teddy, sees Jima, that's what he calls me, Jima, and he goes so excited and starts kicking, like, that is, find the joys in your life. Because this times on stage when you're standing at Symphony Hall, or the times you're standing next to Jeremy Renner, are far and few between. And I know a lot of theater people have wonderful families and are, blessed as well. And that is truly the moment. Have a happy life and hang in there with your career and love your family, your parents, especially the young kids, especially high school and teenagers. Like I was directing the Adams family at Mountain View High School. And, I'll say things that I'm like, if you want to do this, like if you want to, have your parents pay for lessons or drive you here or sign you up for that camp, do your chores, make them happy. So if your mom has to keep saying to you, empty the dishwasher, and then you walk up to her and say, Mom, will you drive me, to Jenny's house? And she goes, you didn't empty the dishwasher. And then you get mad at your mom. So that's what I'm trying to teach the kids. Happy parents means you'll get to do what you want to do. You have to have that, I call it a triangle. So if you're doing your chores, if that's why I think sometimes I just don't get it. Just do what you're asked, in your job. If you didn't do what was asked of you in your job, what would happen? You'd be fired.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're being a child, whether it's in theater or in school or whatever, or at home, if you're not doing what you're asked, like I said, the natural consequences should be there. So I'm not going to ground you. It's just that I asked you to empty the dishwasher. You didn't do it. You asked me to drive you to Jenny's. I'm not going to do it. Natural consequence. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like just be kind, love your family. I teach a lot of kids. If you're, just follow the rules, just follow the rules and, you will have a happy life. And occasionally you'll get to really do what you love on stage and performing.
Well, that is some truly, truly wonderful advice, Debbie. And gosh, what else can I say other than, thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank you
letting
for
me,
asking
gosh,
me.
gosh, I mean, conversing with you today, just such an honor. And you were an amazing person to chat with. So just, thank you
You
so
as
much.
well. You
Like,
as
like,
well.
like, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I mean, this was wonderful experience.
Oh, thank you. And I wish you all the best in your future job endeavors, and it will happen. It will happen. Sometimes it just takes longer than always. It always takes, like, when you get bruised or cut and you're like, why isn't that healed already? Everything just takes longer than we want it to,